So he's talking about this big continent in between what is now known as North America, which they probably didn't even know about back then. But he's talking about Atlantis being in the middle, right where the ridge is. Interestingly enough, Plato has been vindicated in his writings. For one, Herodotus gives us a little bit of a clue on where he's talking about. So having those two sources sort of vindicate each other is good. It's always good to have more than one source for geography. But he explains that 10 days journey beyond the Pillars of Hercules. This is what Herodotus says. And then Plato says in the ocean, in the middle of the ocean, where there was like a main port in between another world he's talking about, which now explains how Native Americans could have gotten there. And he's talking about these Atlanteans. Now, for a long time, people thought this was all just mythology. None of this was true. However, we now know that the Atlantic Ridge was once above sea level, and the melting of the polar ice caps have covered the entire ridge of the Atlantic underwater. So sure enough, people made a hypothesis that if this is true, there must be a city down there. And behold, they went down there, and scuba divers went under, and they found all of this. It looks like ancient Egypt. Now, I gotta be honest though, these pyramids and most of this stuff was found closer to Portugal and Spain and those islands over there. And it leads one to think that maybe Plato isn't describing just this circular city, and maybe that could be more mythical. Maybe he is talking about two different places and tying them into one. Maybe he learned the wrong thing from somebody who misspoke, because we haven't found these pyramids and all these artifacts are not found exactly where Atlantis should be, describing on how big he says Atlantis is. However, it is pretty interesting that it is in the Atlantic Ocean and not the Mediterranean. The same type of building structures, pyramids, statues, it's all sitting underneath the Atlantis. With that being said, I think there definitely was a giant continent here. Maybe not as populated, maybe not as thriving as Europe was, or Egypt for that matter. But I think there's a lot of evidence that we can point to safely say there was an extra continent poking out of the Atlantic Ocean before the rising sea levels took it underneath. Plato was talking about this mythical city, and people didn't really believe in it, and because there really wasn't a lot of sources for it besides Plato and Herodotus. But sure enough, there it is, right where he describes it. A lot of people think Atlantis is in different locations. People say Africa, people say Athens, people say Crete. But if you really read the text, it's pretty clear on where it is. Beyond the Pillars of Hercules, the straits of Gibraltar. And there's really no debate here. This is where they're talking about. Middle of the Atlantic Ocean is probably where the name Atlantic got its name from. So I think this is a clear-cut case. Atlantis is a real place. It's sunk beneath the ocean. Maybe this is where the Great Flood myth came from. Either way, I think this is mind-blowing stuff. And thanks for watching. Like and subscribe.